A good Erev Shabbos. We have very much to cover this week. Sunday is already Rosh Chodesh Nissan, so we swing into high gear, preparing ourselves for Pesach. This Shabbat is Parshas Hachodesh, so we stand ready to fulfill all the mitzvahs that God allows us this month and invites us to participate in this month and this upcoming holiday. Please note that we have the forms for selling your chametz available in the shul, also online through the website, and we now have the COR and the OU Pesach guides ready for you to read through to help prepare yourself and your household for the freedom that's to come. Remember that this coming week, Wednesday evening, we'll have a Pesach workshop, both live and on Zoom, to address any concerns or questions that people are wondering about as we enter into the season of redemption. In our brief morning conversation after Minyan, we've been reviewing the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which, among other sources, notes a custom to recite the portion each day of the first 12 months of Nissan from Parshas Naso that corresponds to each of the 12 tribes and the gifts they brought to the inauguration of the Mishkan. The month of Nissan was historically the time when that dedication took place, the dedication of the Mishkan, the tabernacle that we speak about so often, and reading the gifts that the head of each of the 12 tribes brought to inaugurate that portable sanctuary connects us with it. You can find those in the back of your Siddur beginning on page 948. They're also the readings for each day of Hanukkah, the festival of rededication. Also on this Shabbat, we're invited to join with shuls around the world for the 10th annual Yesh Tikva Fertility Awareness Shabbat. Yesh Tikva is an organization whose name means there is hope, and it's dedicated to supporting those families amongst the Jewish people who struggle with infertility. And they work on encouraging us to increase our feeling of solidarity and responsibility with these families among our people. When you think of Tevye and his daughters in stage or on film, we think of Kanai Nahara, a family with 5 children. In Shalom Aleicham's story, there are actually 7 daughters. There's an Israeli film from the 60s called Tevye and his 7 daughters. When we think of families in the more traditional world, this image might be one that comes to mind. Family configurations like this may be found, and at the same time, we should remember that it's neither universal nor easy. In fact, many, many families throughout history and to this very day struggle with infertility of various types, beginning with our matriarchs. And it's important for us to say that we see you, we share your struggle, and we support you. Everything is a blessing, including a family, and while some struggle with shidduchim, finding an appropriate mate, others struggle with pregnancy, and it happens much more than we think or would be inclined to acknowledge. So at the beginning of this Pesach season, when the mitzvah of "and you should tell your children" is in the air, let's acknowledge that it's not a given for every Jewish family by any stretch. Yesh Tikva asked us to distribute a prayer publicly on behalf of those who are trying to meet this challenge, and we have copies that you can take and distribute in the lobby, or say yourself on occasion, like Friday night candlelighting, when it's good to think of others who have various needs. When we daven for each other, it brings us close. If you would like a copy of this emailed to you, please let me know. This week, we're also completing our reading this year of the book of Exodus, Chumash Shemot. We will stand together and say, Chazak, Chazak. These days, the Jewish people need all the strength we can get. Following that, we read the portion of Hachodesh Hazeh Lachem. This month shall be for you the first of months, from Parshas Bo back earlier in the book, when we got really the first mitzvah of the Torah of setting up the Jewish calendar, with Nissan as the first month. Taking out the second Sefer Torah and reading from it brings everyone's attention to the knowledge that Pesach is on the way, just as we had the 3 earlier special readings for Shkalim, to remind everyone to give a half a silver shekel in Adar, Zachor, to remember to blot out Amalek's memory, which we did on Purim, and Para last week to remind us to purify our hearts and souls in advance of Pesach. This week's special Torah reading also comes with a dedicated Haftorah from Yechezkel Hanavi, Ezekiel, chapters 45 and 46. This is the prophet's vision of the future, how the third temple will look, and how we will be able to make best use of it. The prophet talks about the dedication which will take place in Nissan, the upcoming month, just like the dedication of the original Mishkan, which will commemorate those of us who say the portion of the Nasi each day for the first 12 days of Nissan. That word itself that the prophet uses here, Nasi, which can mean a number of different things. It means a leader. Most commentaries understand it to mean the Messiah in the context of the prophets. In contemporary language, we use Nasi to mean president. Isaac Herzog is Nasi Hamadina, the president of the state of Israel. But maybe it means leader in the sense of king, as in the king of Israel, who is also to be have his throne restored in the Messianic era. Rav Breuer suggests that it means that only God will be our true king in the Messianic era. We'll finally appreciate and recognize that all the political and temporal rulers are only that. They're office holders or administrators for a time, and then leadership passes on to others. At that time, maybe we will stop ascribing such far-reaching powers and superhuman expectations of our flesh and blood leaders. Another hopeful idea expressed in this Haftorah is the opening of the gates of the temple. The beginning of chapter 46 says, this is what Hashem Elokim says, the gate of the inner court facing east shall be closed 6 days of the week. Ko amar Hashem Elokim, shara chatzer hapnimis haponeh kodim, yeh sagur sheshes yemei hamaisa, but on Shabbos it will be opened, and on Rosh Chodesh it will be opened. Yom HaShabbos yitpatzeach, Yom Hachodesh yipaseach. The idea here is that not only Shabbat, but also Rosh Chodesh will assume a greater importance even than now, with Rosh Chodesh becoming more of a holiday for all of us. Since we will recognize the greatness of those days, Jews will want to come to the temple and worship there. So the gates will be open to all on those days. Then we notice that it says the gates will be opened rather than something like the Kohanim or the Levi'im will open the gates, which is what you might expect. So Medrash Rabbah explains that the gate will be open by the hand of God, who will do this to ensure that the temple is more welcoming, warm, and accessible to everyone. That is something to think about, especially in our times of heightened security and hardening our facilities against various threats, fences, locks, cameras, and all this. Maybe each time we open the gate in the morning to let people in for the minyan, we should think about this verse of the gates opening of their own accord on Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh. The goal, ultimately, while staying safe, of course, is to be able to welcome more people into Shul, and even more, to make being part of the Jewish community, particularly where we gather to daven and learn, something that is of value and worth to more people at every stage of their lives. Not just in preparation for a bar mitzvah or to say Kaddish, which are important, but really as an ongoing project of connecting with and growing in the Jewish community. At a certain point in our history, the Mishkan that we have been speaking about, which was the focus of our community and the place where serving God was central, changed and became the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. This was the place in Jerusalem where the divine presence rested most obviously among the Jewish people. The Mishkan was portable, sort of a tent, a little bit more elaborate, while the temple was certainly more of a permanent structure. The tent metaphor, though, is very present in our minds. Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, even before his name was changed to Yisrael, was called an Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim, a righteous man who lived in tents. For example, to this day, someone who devotes a lot of time to studying is called a Yoshev Ohel, someone who dwells in the tent, in reference to that. So it makes sense, according to Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, that the Mishkan take the form of a tent, reflecting its higher purpose, to guide the Jewish people in alignment with Torah. Toward the end of our Parsha this week, in the fourth Aliyah, it says that when we finished making the components, all the parts that fit together, came together to build this portable sanctuary, the Jewish people brought the Mishkan to Moshe, the tent and its vessels, whereas earlier it was emphasized that Moshe himself lived in a Mishkan, a tent. Maybe, says Reb Tzadok, that this was Moshe's intention, that we should all devote ourselves to this kind of life, And if it would have been the case that Moshe would have led us into Israel, perhaps we would have. But it's an academic question because ultimately it was Joshua, Yehoshua, who led us into Israel and not Moshe. Joshua was humble, he was devoted, he was faithful, and chosen by Moshe, designated in the eyes of all as the successor. And he was a military leader, and the land needed conquest and settlement. That was the need of leadership at the time. Nevertheless, the Mishkan went with us into Israel and stood at Gilgal for 14 years, in Shiloh for 369 years. You can still see the outline there if you visit Shiloh. And then to Nov and Givon for another 57 years. So says the Gemara in Tractate Zevachim. It was the unifier of the Jewish people, the Mishkan HaEdut, the Torah calls it, the tabernacle of testimony. And in fact, we are the testament, that it kept us together and focused. Rabbi Yosef Albo in the Ikarim says that just as testimony should not be distorted or twisted to mean something counter to what the witnesses testify, our testimony as a Jewish people cannot become distorted into something other than it should be, which is the wholehearted service of the Creator according to God's own instruction and request. For offerings, for holidays, for building a family, for conducting our livelihoods, teaching our next generation, and building our community. We do everything we can to retain the sense of openness and welcoming that a tent implies, hearkening back to Abraham's tent that was open on all sides to all visitors and travelers, and at the same time, we appreciate that we are under the yoke of divine presence and protection. Every year now, they come out with a few new Haggadahs, with collections of insights and teachings from Jewish leaders. One that just hit the bookstores in the last week or two, because the publication date says March 2025, is a new Haggadah called the Abu Chatzera Legacy Haggadah. Abu Chatzeras were an illustrious family of Moroccan Rabbanim. If you've heard or probably seen pictures of the Baba Sali, Rabbi Yisrael Abu Chatzera, his nickname means the praying grandfather or grandfather Yisrael, depending on who's explaining. And he passed away about 40 years ago, well into his 90s. And his memory is still revered today by Jews around the world. In this Haggadah, it mentions that when the Baba Sali was still living in Morocco, he had the custom of inviting 20 poor Jews from the community to share in his Seder, and he would pour the wine for them. He would wait on them, treat them like family. On the night of the second Seder, he would invite wealthy members of the community to sit at his table for the end of the Seder, for singing songs with joy and excitement. It says that Baba Sali was trying to get the message across to us that really there is no important distinction to be made among Jews, and to model for us the view that we are all in this together. This is as good a time as any to remind ourselves to be in touch with me or with the office if we can offer a place at our Seder table to anyone who needs. And of course, if you know of someone who needs a place to celebrate the Seder, please put us in touch. We say at the outset of the Seder, all who are hungry, come and eat. Whoever needs, come and share Pesach with us, and we mean it. In our times, which seem less stable than they have in a generation or two, we appreciate the gifts of belonging to a community, to be able to celebrate and learn and rejoice together. Please God, may it always be in good health. A good Shabbos, Chodesh Tov, and Chag Kasher V'Sameach.